When technology billionaire, Bill Gates walked into Judge Beatrix Thornwald's courtroom without a lawyer by his side. A ripple of disbelief swept across the gallery. Judge Thornwald, after 30 years on the bench, had seen it all. Corrupt senators, crying CEOs, actors with too much Botox, and lawyers who thought charisma could outwit the law. But never, not once, had she seen a man so rich, so celebrated, and so absolutely unprepared to defend himself in a high-stakes legal battle. She tapped her gavel once, then twice more. The chatter ceased. "Court is now in session," she said crisply. "Case number 2025 CV7842, Magnatech. Industries versus Gates Future Energy." Bill Gates stood quietly from his seat. He wore a plain navy suit. No tie, no entourage, no legal team. Judge Thornwald glanced at the papers before her. "Mr. Gates, are you representing yourself today?" Gates nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." A soft gasp ran through the gallery. Even the court reporter looked up from her keys. The plaintiff's table, filled with highly polished attorneys in $10,000 suits, couldn't hide their grins. Dominic Reeves, lead counsel for Magnatech, leaned toward his client Victor Hammond, Magnatech's sleek and dangerous CEO, and whispered something that made them both chuckle. Thornwald narrowed her eyes. "Very well. Opening statements. Mr. Reeves, you may proceed." Dominic Reeves stood and approached the bench with confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Thank you, Your Honor. This is a straightforward case. Magnatech Industries developed a breakthrough in battery storage, technology that could revolutionize energy infrastructure. Not long after we filed for our patent, Mr. Gates's company released a product that, in every meaningful way, mimicked our design." He paused for effect, then added, "We have the patent. We have the timeline. We have the evidence." Thornwald nodded. "Mr. Gates?" Bill Gates slowly approached the front of the courtroom. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of wrinkled papers. One fluttered to the ground. He bent down, picked it up, and shuffled the stack in silence. A few people in the gallery chuckled. "Your Honor," he began, voice softer than expected, "Magnatech didn't invent this technology. My team did. We began working on it more than a year before their filing date." He flipped through the disorganized papers, lost his place, and frowned. "There's a special layer. Sorry, I have a diagram somewhere." Thornwald let out a single, involuntary laugh. "Mr. Gates," she said, brushing her bangs back with a tired sigh, "this isn't a TED Talk. If you're representing yourself, I expect you to follow legal procedure. Do you have your materials properly organized?" Bill blinked. "I think so." Another wave of laughter. Even the bailiff smiled. Dominic Reeves smirked at his client, mouthing, "This'll be easy." In the second row, a woman with short black hair looked increasingly nervous. Lia Chen, Gates's chief engineer, gripped the edge of the bench. This was not going as planned. Judge Thornwald gave a weary glance to her clerk. "Let's proceed. Mr. Reeves, call your first witness." "Miu se sui." For the next hour, the courtroom watched a legal slaughter. Magnatech's lawyers paraded charts, emails, and side-by-side design comparisons across digital displays. Their arguments were sleek, organized, and technically sharp. Gates sat silently, scribbling notes and occasionally staring at a speck on the ceiling. At one point, Thornwald interrupted. "Mr. Gates, are you following this?" Bill blinked. "Yes, Your Honor, just thinking." The judge frowned. "Well, think a little louder, please." "This is your defense." From the gallery, titters. But Lia Chen wasn't laughing. She leaned forward as the prosecution unveiled a battery prototype, sleek, polished, and suspiciously familiar. Her jaw clenched. "That's ours," she thought. Judge Thornwald inspected the prototype, turning it carefully. "Impressive," she said, unaware that she was holding a stolen design. "Miu se sui." After a particularly damning round of testimony, Victor Hammond took the stand. He wore a navy pinstripe suit, his silver hair perfectly styled. "Magnatech values innovation and integrity," he said, his voice syrupy smooth. "We had minimal contact with Mr. Gates or his company. A single meeting about a possible partnership, which went nowhere." Bill Gates finally looked up, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. Judge Thornwald tilted her head. Was this man really so detached, or was something else going on? "Mr. Gates," she said as Hammond stepped down, Would you like to cross-examine? Bill stood, adjusted his glasses. Not at this time, Your Honor. Another whisper through the room. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Very well. Plaintiff may continue tomorrow. Mr. Gates, I suggest you come better prepared. Mieux soit. Outside, reporters swarmed. Mr. Gates, will you hire a lawyer now? Are you giving up the case? Why did you choose to represent yourself? Bill Gates said nothing. Laya caught up to him on the courthouse steps. That was a disaster, she hissed. They're burying us in there. Gates turned calmly to her. Let's go. Where? To prepare. Mieux soit. That evening, in a tiny office across the street, they began. Gates set up an old laptop. Laya pulled up internal security logs. They began reviewing footage from 2 months, through the day Hammond had visited their lab. There it was. Hammond's assistant snapping photos behind his back. Hammond himself peering into restricted areas. He stole it, Laya said. Flat out stole it. And we're going to prove it, Bill said. How? They've got lawyers stacked to the ceiling. We've got the truth. And something else. What? Bill smiled as he pulled a small prototype from his bag. We've got this. Night had fallen over San Francisco, but the lights in a small rented office across from the federal courthouse still burned. Inside, Bill Gates sat at a cluttered table, sleeves rolled up, glasses reflecting the bluish glow of his aging laptop. Across from him, Laya Chen, his lead engineer, hovered over another screen. Her fingers moved quickly as she sifted through hours of security footage. There, she whispered suddenly, freezing the video. You see that? On the screen, Victor Hammond's assistant could be seen holding her phone slightly angled toward a restricted lab window. The timestamp matched the day of their visit. And here, watch. Laya clicked to another clip. That's Hammond. Look, he's staring straight into the restricted zone. You can even see him nodding to someone. Gates leaned in. That's enough to prove intent, he said softly. But it's not enough to win. Then what do? We show them what they tried to steal. He reached under the table and pulled out a small black device, no larger than a shoebox. Laya frowned. Is that the prototype? A modified one, Gates replied. The original stays locked up, but this one can make a point. She looked at him for a long moment. You're really going to do this alone, aren't you? I'm doing it alone, he said, but not without preparation. He turned his laptop around. The screen displayed a massive whiteboard filled with case law references, technical comparisons, even obscure legislative notes. This is insane, Laya said, shaking her head. They have a dozen lawyers, and none of them are expecting what I'm about to do. Mieux soit. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Rumors of Gates's disastrous first day had spread, drawing even more media to the gallery. Many expected today to be the end, either a quiet surrender or a humiliating collapse. Instead, Bill Gates walked in with steady footsteps, his expression unreadable. In his hand, he carried a small cardboard box. Judge Thornwald raised an eyebrow. Mr. Gates, are you prepared to present your defense? Actually, Your Honor, Gates said. I'd like to request a one-day recess. A wave of whispers rolled through the courtroom. On what grounds? The judge asked, surprised. I need to reconsider my approach, Gates said, sounding uncharacteristically defeated. The plaintiff's case is thorough. Dominic Reeves leaned back with a smug smile. Objection, Your Honor, he said. Mr. Gates has had ample time to prepare. A delay only benefits him. It's not my intent to delay for advantage, Gates replied. But after yesterday, I realized I may need professional assistance. Laughter erupted. Even Judge Thornwald allowed herself a wry smile. Very well. One day, don't waste it. Back in their rented office, Laya was pacing. You told the judge you were hiring a lawyer? No, Gates said calmly. I told her I might. Then what are we actually doing? 2 things, Gates replied. Finishing this, he nodded toward the demonstration device, and meeting someone. Later that afternoon, the door creaked open. A woman stepped in, mid-40s, dark eyes, tightly wound bun. Her expression was uneasy. Dr. Priya Nair? Gates asked, standing. She nodded. I can't stay long, she said. I'm risking everything being here. And I appreciate that, Gates said. Please sit. Laya looked confused. Who is she? Until last week, Gates explained. Dr. Nair was head of R&D at Magnatech. Laya's eyes widened. Not Dr. Murphy? No, he replaced her. After she raised ethical concerns. For the next hour, Priya spoke softly but clearly. About internal meetings. About Hammond's orders. About photographs taken. About their desperate attempt to reverse engineer. Gates' design before his team could file a patent. I couldn't be a part of it anymore, she said. I left, but I kept the emails, notes, everything. Gates sat back. Would you be willing to testify? Priya hesitated. They'll come after me. We'll protect you, legally, publicly. I just need the truth. She nodded slowly. Then yes. Miu se sue. The next morning, the courthouse was electric. Every seat in the gallery was full. Reporters lined the walls. Hammond and Reeves sat smugly at the plaintiff's table. Confident their victory was near, Bill Gates entered, his expression serene, carrying the same cardboard box. Judge Thornwald raised an eyebrow. Mr. Gates, are you ready? I am, Your Honor. Do you have an opening statement? I'd like to call a witness first. A witness? Thornwald blinked. You didn't submit any names. This witness came forward yesterday, Gates said, after hearing the testimony presented in this court. Reeves jumped to his feet. Objection. This is irregular. Your Honor, we've had no opportunity to vet this individual. Mr. Gates, the judge said sharply, the witness is relevant and their testimony is urgent. If Your Honor allows it, the court will understand why. Judge Thornwald studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod. Proceed. Who is your witness? Dr. Priya Nair. At that moment, the door opened, and the former Magnatech scientist entered, head high but hands slightly trembling. Victor Hammond's face turned to stone. Priya was sworn in and seated. Dr. Nair, Gates began, what was your role at Magnatech? I led the battery technology division for 8 years. Why did you leave? Because we were ordered to copy Mr. Gates's design after Mr. Hammond visited his facility. A collective gasp rose from the courtroom. Judge Thornwald banged her gavel. Order, continue. Can you explain how this happened? Gates asked. After Hammond's visit, he called an emergency meeting. He had photos taken without permission. He said the coding design he saw was revolutionary. He told us to drop everything and replicate it. Did you protest? Yes, I said it was unethical. He told me, why pay for what we can take for free? Gasps again. Thornwald's expression changed. No longer amused, but deadly serious. Do you have proof of this? Gates asked. Yes, Priya said, opening a folder. Emails, notes, internal memos. Gates handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. And this, Gates said, turning to his box, is the demonstration device. He activated it, a 3D hologram projected from the table, layer by layer comparing the Gates prototype and the Magnatech version. They were identical. Priya looked at the judge. We were nowhere near this design before Hammond's visit. Everything changed after that. Miu se sue. As the demonstration ended, Hammond stood up, face red. This is a setup. Sit down, Mr. Hammond, Judge Thornwald snapped. One more outburst and you'll be removed. Dominic Reeves sat frozen, the weight of the courtroom's shift sinking in. Judge Thornwald looked over the evidence in silence. Then finally she looked up at Gates. Mr. Gates, I believe the court is beginning to understand your strategy. He simply nodded. The courtroom was still buzzing when Judge Thornwald announced the midday recess. Cameras swarmed outside, capturing every strained face, every tight-lipped denial, every panicked call from Magnatech's legal team. Inside their rented office, Bill Gates quietly adjusted his demonstration unit while Laya Chen paced. That went better than I thought, she said cautiously. It's not over yet, Gates replied without looking up. They'll come after her. Priya? They have to. She's the linchpin. As if on cue, Laya's phone buzzed. It's Priya, she said, answering. Her face tightened. They're calling her. Threatening legal action, calling her a traitor. Gates sighed, then pulled a folder from his briefcase. Prepare a motion for witness protection under corporate whistleblower statutes. We'll file it if they escalate. He opened his laptop. A forensic report. Blinked on the screen, a third party. Certification of the authenticity of Priya's emails and memos. Let them try, Gates murmured. We're ready. Miu se sue. Back in the courtroom, Judge Thornwald straightened her robes and called the session back to order. She looked different now, no longer amused or dismissive, but sharp, focused, and entirely in control. "Mr. Gates," she began, "thank you for presenting this morning's materials. You may proceed with your next witness or evidence." "I have no further witnesses, Your Honor," Gates said. "The evidence speaks for itself." Dominic Reeves stood quickly. "Your Honor, the plaintiff requests permission to present a rebuttal witness, Dr. Marcus Whitfield, Chief Technical Officer at Cambridge Energy Systems." Thornwald nodded. "Proceed." A tall man with neatly combed hair and thin spectacles took the stand. He carried himself like a scientist, which he was. "Dr. Whitfield," Reeves began, "you've reviewed both Magnatech's and Mr. Gates's battery designs." "Yes, I have." "And in your expert opinion, are the designs identical?" "They share similarities," Whitfield admitted. "But there are important distinctions. The cooling system design differs. The outer casing is made from a different composite, and while both use a nano-coating process, the application methods diverge." Reeves looked encouraged. "So is it plausible that Magnatech arrived at its solution independently?" "It's possible," Whitfield said carefully. "In technology, sometimes similar problems lead to similar outcomes." Laya leaned over to Gates in the gallery. "That's not good." "He's not lying," Gates whispered back. "He's just not telling the whole story." When cross-examination began, Gates approached Whitfield slowly. "Dr. Whitfield," he said, "can you describe the layer sequence in the nano-coating Magnatech used?" "Graphene-based, titanium-doped silicon oxide, and a ceramic sealant." "Same as ours?" Whitfield hesitated. "Yes, but—" "And the molecular spacing of the titanium compound. Did you measure it?" "I did." "And how close was it to our published spec sheets?" "Within a 0.2% margin," Whitfield admitted. A ripple of murmurs passed through the courtroom. "Would you say that's coincidental?" "Highly unlikely," the expert said softly. Gates nodded. "So we're talking about a product with identical internal structure, nearly identical performance, and a creation timeline that starts after their CEO visits my lab. Still think that's coincidence?" Whitfield sighed. "Not anymore." "Mieux c'est souhait." Judge Thornwald allowed the courtroom to settle before calling the next witness. "Does the plaintiff wish to call anyone else?" Dominic Reeves looked uncomfortable. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Victor Hammond." The man who'd once strode confidently into the courtroom now approached the stand with a bit less arrogance. He straightened his tie and took the oath with stiff hands. "Mr. Hammond," Reeves began, "can you confirm whether you or your team copied Mr. Gates's design?" "Absolutely not," Hammond said firmly. "We had been working on similar concepts for years. And your meeting with Mr. Gates was exploratory. Nothing concrete came of it. Did you authorize anyone to photograph restricted areas?" "Of course not." Reeves nodded, trying to move on quickly. "No further questions." "Mieux c'est souhait." Gates stood slowly, taking the courtroom's attention with him. "Mr. Hammond," he said calmly, "did you visit my facility on February 11th of this year?" "Yes." "Were you told certain areas were off limits?" "Yes." "Did you or your assistant enter those areas?" "No." "Then how do you explain this?" He gestured toward the clerk, who played a security clip on the courtroom screen. It showed Hammond's assistant clearly photographing sensitive equipment. In the background, Hammond himself peered into restricted zones. Gasps. "Your Honor," Reeves shouted, "context is missing." "There's more," Gates said. He held up a small leather notebook. "Do you recognize this, Mr. Hammond?" Hammond went pale. "That's my notebook. Recovered legally by Dr. Nair, when she was instructed to clean out your office after a water leak," Gates said. He opened to a bookmarked page and began to read. Saw Gates's prototype. "Nanolayering is key. Photos confirm structure. Have Priya's team rebuild immediately. Patent before he does." The silence in the room was deafening. Hammond didn't speak. He couldn't. Judge Thornwald stared at him, face unreadable. "Mr. Reeves," she said flatly, "do you wish to recross?" Reeves shook his head. After a long pause, the judge tapped her gavel once. "Court will recess for 15 minutes. When we return, both parties will meet me in chambers." As the courtroom emptied, reporters rushed outside, filing updates. Headlines were already flooding social media. Bill Gates stuns court with secret evidence. Magnatech CEO caught in lie. The tech trial of the decade just flipped. Back in their war room, Reeves turned to Hammond, voice low and sharp. "This is done. He buried us. Then fix it." Hammond snapped. "You should have thought about that before writing it all down." Mieux c'est souhait. Inside Judge Thornwald's chambers, she sat at her desk reading the notebook again. Gates, Reeves, and Hammond sat opposite. "Mr. Reeves," she said calmly, "you're not just losing a civil case. Your client could face criminal charges." Reeves was quiet. Hammond's face was ghost white. "I'll give you this chance," she continued. "Settle now." "No deal," Hammond hissed. Gates leaned forward. "Then I move forward with the full legal remedy," he said, "including a development ban." Reeves paled. A 5-year ban would gut Magnatech's entire energy division. Then they shouldn't have stolen it. Mieux c'est souhait. Back in the courtroom, Judge Thornwald banged the gavel. "We will resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Closing arguments will be heard." She glanced at Gates as he packed up. Something about him had changed. Something she hadn't seen clearly before. Not just resolve, not just intelligence. A plan. And it was working. The morning sun filtered through the courthouse windows, casting golden beams onto the polished floor of courtroom. The gallery was packed. Every journalist, tech blogger, and curious bystander had shown up, sensing the final act of a story that had taken a dramatic turn. Bill Gates entered quietly, his usual stack of papers replaced by a single, neatly organized binder. No longer the fumbling amateur from day one, he moved with calm precision. People stood. Whispers followed him like shadows. At the plaintiff's table, Victor Hammond sat like a statue. Gone was the glint of confidence. His tie was slightly loose. His fingers tapped the edge of the table without rhythm. Dominic Reeves looked tired. He'd clearly been up all night trying to patch a ship that was sinking fast. Judge Beatrix Thornwald entered last. Her expression was firm but not unfriendly. She banged the gavel once. "This court is now in session. We will now hear closing statements. Mr. Reeves, you may begin." Mieux c'est souhait. Reeves stood and straightened his jacket, voice calm but notably less assured than in previous days. "Your Honor, the defendant has presented troubling allegations. However, we believe that what's been shown is a set of unfortunate coincidences, not a criminal conspiracy." He gestured toward Hammond. "Magnatech has a long history of innovation. Our product design, while similar to Mr. Gates's, is distinct in several ways. And while mistakes may have been made, visits, photographs, none of that proves deliberate theft." He paused. "Dr. Nair, while compelling, is a former employee with personal grievances, and the security footage, while concerning, does not prove the design itself was stolen. Innovation often walks the same road." He stepped back. "We ask the court to reject the notion of a 5-year ban. It is disproportionate, and it would destroy a company that employs thousands." Mieux c'est souhait. Judge Thornwald nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Gates?" Bill Gates stood. "Your Honor, I won't take long." He approached the center of the courtroom. His voice was calm, deliberate. "This case is not about competition. It's not about whose engineers worked harder or who had more funding. It's about honesty." He paused, scanning the courtroom. "Mr. Hammond entered my facility under the pretense of a partnership. His assistant photographed proprietary designs. Within weeks, Magnatech filed a patent that matched our internal architecture down to the molecular level." He looked at the judge directly. When confronted, they denied it. They lied under oath. They attacked a whistleblower. They hoped their money and legal team would scare us into silence. He stepped closer to the bench. "But we came with truth and proof. And I ask this court not just to rule in our favor, but to send a message that stealing innovation has consequences." Silence. Then Gates stepped back. "Thank you." Judge Thornwald adjusted her glasses. She looked down at her notes, then back up. "The court will now issue its ruling." The room held its collective breath, based on the overwhelming evidence, including security footage, internal communications, and direct testimony from a credible witness. This court finds that Magnatech Industries engaged in corporate espionage and attempted fraudulent patent acquisition. Gasps. Hammond slumped slightly in his chair. Therefore, Thornwald continued, patent number 18726HN1 is hereby invalidated, and all claims made by the plaintiff are dismissed with prejudice. Reporters scrambled to tweet. She wasn't done. Furthermore, under Section 47B of the Technological Innovation Protection Act of 2018, this court hereby issues a 5-year development prohibition order against Magnatech Industries. The gallery exploded in hushed murmurs. This ruling bars Magnatech from developing, producing, marketing, or filing patents for any technology, substantially based on the defendant's energy storage system for a period of 5 years. Effective immediately. Hammond went pale. Judge Thornwald turned to Reeves. This court also refers this case to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Investigation into possible criminal activity, including perjury and industrial espionage. She closed the folder in front of her. And finally, the court awards $20 million in damages to Gates Future Energy, along with full reimbursement for court costs. She paused. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Mieux c'est souhait. As the gallery erupted, reporters rushed toward the aisle. Bill Gates turned to Lia Chen, who had been watching from the front row. You did it, she whispered. We did it, he replied. Victor Hammond remained seated, staring blankly at the floor. Reeves was already packing his briefcase with shaking hands. The fall from power had been fast, brutal, and televised. Outside the courthouse, the steps were flooded with journalists. Mr. Gates, was your courtroom performance on day 1 a tactic? Was Priya Nair part of your plan from the beginning? Will you press criminal charges? Bill Gates raised a hand and simply said, We came for justice. We got it. Then he walked past the cameras, Lia at his side. Mieux c'est souhait. That evening, back in the small office, Lia watched as Gates closed his laptop. A message from Priya Nair blinked on the screen. Thank you. I can finally breathe again. So, Lia asked, what now? Gates looked out the window. Now, he said, we go back to building. 2 months had passed since the courtroom gavel had fallen. But the ripple effects of the Gates, the Magnatech case were still being felt across Silicon Valley and far beyond. Victor Hammond had resigned in disgrace. Magnatech's stock had plummeted 62% in the weeks following the ruling. Multiple senior executives had been subpoenaed. As part of the DOJ's corporate espionage investigation, the 5-year development ban effectively gutted the company's clean energy ambitions. It was, as one headline in Tech Review put it, the most expensive lie in tech history. Mieux c'est souhait. But at Gates Future Energy, something very different was happening. In a spacious new wing of the company's Bellevue headquarters, Lia Chen walked briskly. Down a hallway lined with glass walls and humming lab equipment, engineers crowded around a central table, pointing at a glowing holographic projection of their next prototype. At the far end of the hall, behind a closed door with a frosted window marked Office of Strategic Affairs, a familiar voice said quietly, Let her in. Lia entered, sitting across a large walnut desk. Bill Gates looked more relaxed than he had in months. A coffee mug steamed beside a stack of printouts. On the wall, framed on either side of a whiteboard filled with legal notes and molecular diagrams, were 2 objects, a judge's gavel and a blackened circuit module, the actual prototype from the trial. You asked to see me, Lia said. I did, Gates replied. How would you like to head our new internal IP defense team? Lia blinked. Me? You spotted the theft before I did. You pieced together half of the case with raw footage and instinct. And if we're going to keep building things that matter, we need someone who can keep them protected. She was quiet for a moment, then smiled. I'll do it. Gates nodded. Good, you start tomorrow. Later that afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the secure guest entrance at Gates Future Energy. The man at the wheel stepped out and opened the door for a woman with neatly styled silver hair, a crisp blazer and a quiet confidence in her stride. Judge Beatrix Thornwald had retired from the bench just weeks earlier. After 30 years of service, she'd shocked the legal community by announcing her decision to pursue meaningful innovation outside the courtroom. Lia greeted her at the door. Judge Thornwald, sorry, Beatrix, it's an honor. No more titles, she replied with a small smile. I'm here as an applicant. She was escorted to a private conference room where Bill Gates stood waiting. Beatrix, he said, shaking her hand, thank you for coming. I have to admit, she said, setting down her leather folder, I was curious. Your offer intrigued me. That was the idea. They sat down. A long moment passed. Why me? She asked. Gates leaned forward. Because you know what it's like to build something and have it stolen. She looked at him, startled. I did my research, he said. MIT 1984. Your early work in solid-state capacitors. You brought a prototype to Vertex Labs. They published before you filed. Beatrix said nothing. Her jaw tightened slightly. That's why you went into law, isn't it? Gates asked, to stop it from happening to someone else. She gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. You spent 3 decades protecting other people's ideas. I want you to help me protect mine. From inside, Beatrix opened the folder and pulled out the offer letter. Director of Innovation Protection, she read aloud. That's quite the title. It's quite the responsibility, Gates replied. You know, she said, I've ruled over thousands of cases. But that one with you, it was the only time I ever questioned my own judgment. I underestimated you. You weren't the only one, Gates replied with a grin. Was it all an act? The bumbling first day? Partly, he admitted. I needed to be underestimated. I needed the trap to work. She laughed softly. You planned it like an engineer. I am an engineer, and a dangerous legal tactician. Beatrix closed the folder and stood. When do I start? Now, Gates said. Welcome to the team. They shook hands, 2 people, who had once faced each other across a courtroom, now standing on the same side of the table. Meanwhile, in a small, dimly lit office on the edge of Palo Alto, Victor Hammond sat alone, surrounded by cardboard boxes in silence. His career was over. The board had turned its back on him. Investors wanted answers, and the DOJ wanted more. He stared at an article on his screen. Bill Gates' Courtroom. Victory could reshape tech industry ethics forever. At the bottom of the page, someone had left a comment that struck him like a punch to the chest. Next time, try inventing instead of stealing. Hammond shut the laptop. Meanwhile, in a small, dimly lit office on the edge of Palo Alto, Victor Hammond sat alone, surrounded by cardboard boxes in silence. His career was over. The board had turned its back on him. Investors wanted answers, and the DOJ wanted more. He stared at an article on his screen. Bill Gates' Courtroom. Victory could reshape tech industry ethics forever. At the bottom of the page, someone had left a comment that struck him like a punch to the chest. Next time, try inventing instead of stealing. Hammond shut the laptop. That evening at home, Gates stood on his back porch, looking out over the Seattle skyline. A tablet in his hand blinked with a new notification. Approved. U.S. Department of Energy grants, $80 million to Gates' future. Energy for rural battery infrastructure pilot. He smiled. And that, he whispered to no one in particular, is how you win. Behind him, Laya leaned against the doorframe. You're not done, are you? Not even close. What's next? He turned to her, that spark still alive in his eyes. Whatever changes the world. In an internal presentation room filled with young engineers and interns, Gates stepped forward. On the screen behind him, innovation is only as strong as its protection. What we build here, he said, can't just be new. It has to be protected, respected, and earned. He paused, then added, remember this. If they laugh when you walk into the room, let them. Just make sure they're not laughing when you walk out. The audience burst into applause.